Surveillance Shadows. Chapter 1. A routine day. Jack woke up early in the morning, as usual. His routine: shower, strong coffee, and a goodbye kiss from his wife, Laura, set the tone for the entire day. Laura's kiss lingered on his cheek, warm and tender, a small reminder of their love. Working as a security guard at a large supermarket, Jack was accustomed to a life of routine. His workday was spent in the surveillance room, a dimly lit area filled with monitors displaying every corner of the store, monitoring hidden cameras to ensure everything in the store ran smoothly. Today, like any other day, the store started filling up with customers. Jack scanned the screens, watching people bustle about, their mundane activities providing a strange comfort. His attention was drawn to a familiar figure. It was Laura. She rarely visited the store, especially during his shifts. Jack grew suspicious. Laura seemed anxious, her movements quick and deliberate, as if she was in a hurry. She picked out items almost mechanically, barely looking at the shelves. Soon she left, casting a quick glance around as she exited, leaving Jack deep in thought. Chapter 2. Strange Behavior. The next day, Jack saw Laura in the store again. She moved through the aisles with brisk, nervous movements, stopping occasionally to glance at her phone. When she headed toward the butcher's section, Jack's worry intensified. Laura stopped at the counter where Tom, the butcher, worked. Tom was confident, charismatic, with a rugged appearance that always made Jack uneasy. His broad shoulders and easy smile seemed to draw people in, including Laura. Laura said something to Tom, and he leaned in closer to hear her, his face lighting up with a smile. They both laughed, and Jack noticed a slight blush on Laura's cheeks. She then headed toward the back rooms, areas off-limits to regular customers. Laura disappeared from the camera's view, and Jack's concern grew. He felt a pang of jealousy and confusion. What was Laura doing in those restricted areas? Her actions were out of character, and Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Chapter 3. Doubts. Jack began to notice that Laura was coming to the store more frequently. Her visits had become regular, and each time she spent a considerable amount of time near the butcher's section. Jack couldn't shake off his troubling thoughts. He started to suspect that something was going on between Laura and Tom, but he had no proof. Every time he tried to bring it up with Laura, she brushed it off with a laugh or a dismissive comment, leaving Jack feeling paranoid and foolish. One day, Jack saw Laura and Tom talking behind the counter. Tom leaned in close, and they both laughed heartily, their faces bright with amusement. Laura's eyes sparkled with a light Jack hadn't seen in years, a light that made his heart ache. He felt a surge of jealousy, but tried to convince himself it was just friendly interaction. Still, doubts continued to plague him. At night, as he lay in bed next to Laura, he wondered if he was just being paranoid, or if there was something more to her frequent visits. He couldn't sleep, his mind racing with possibilities, each more painful than the last. Chapter 4. Installing extra cameras. Jack decided to install additional cameras in the back rooms and other hidden spots to uncover the truth. He knew he was breaking the rules, but he couldn't help it. His need to know the truth overshadowed everything else. He meticulously planned the installation, making sure the cameras were well hidden and covered all the blind spots. He began analyzing the recordings, spending hours watching every move Laura and Tom made, trying to find something suspicious. Laura and Tom were often together. Their conversations seemed innocent, but every time they vanished from the camera's view, Jack's anxiety spiked. One day, Jack noticed Laura and Tom heading toward the back room. He switched the camera view but saw nothing suspicious. They were just standing and talking. But the way they stood close to each other, the subtle touches, the shared looks, something didn't feel right. Laura laughed, and Tom showed her something on his phone, leaning in so close that their faces almost touched. Jack felt like he was losing his mind from the uncertainty. It seemed like he was starting to see things that weren't there, yet the gnawing feeling in his gut told him otherwise. His obsession with finding the truth consumed him, affecting his work and his relationship with Laura, but he couldn't stop. Chapter 5. Discovering the Truth. Jack nervously turned on the recording from the last camera, hidden in a secluded corner of the butcher's section. His heart pounded faster as he started watching the footage. His hands trembled, and a sense of impending doom grew in his chest. A deep breath. Another. Jack tried to calm down, but it was futile. On the screen, Laura approached Tom. Her lips slightly parted, and she kissed him gently. Tom embraced her, and their kiss grew more passionate. Jack watched as Tom slowly ran his hands over Laura's body, finding the most sensitive spots. He saw Laura respond to his touches, her body trembling with each of Tom's movements. Jack felt his heart tighten with pain and anger. He couldn't believe his eyes. With each passing second, the scene on the screen became more explicit and passionate. Tom began unbuttoning Laura's blouse, his lips trailing down her neck, leaving a path of heated kisses. Laura moaned softly, her hands roaming over Tom's back, pulling him closer. Jack couldn't tear his eyes away from the screen, his head spinning with shock and jealousy. Tom lifted Laura onto the counter. Her skirt was pushed up, and he stood between her legs, his movements powerful and rhythmic. Laura wrapped her legs around his waist, her head thrown back, eyes closed, lips slightly parted, letting out quiet moans of pleasure. Tom whispered something in Laura's ear, his breath ragged and hot. Jack couldn't bear the sight any longer. He stood up abruptly and headed for the door. Leaving the surveillance room, he felt his heart pounding in his chest. He moved quickly, almost running, through the store's corridors, heading for the butcher's section. Each step echoed dully in his head. When he reached the door of the back room, he heard the very moans and whispers he had seen on the screen. His heart stopped. He slowly opened the door and saw what he could never have imagined. Laura and Tom were consumed by passion. Laura was sitting on the counter, her legs wrapped around Tom's waist, her skirt pushed up, and Tom, standing between her legs, moved with powerful thrusts. His hands gripped her hips tightly, her fingers dug into his shoulders, her head thrown back, eyes closed, lips slightly parted, emitting quiet moans of pleasure. Jack stood motionless, his heart clenched with pain and fury. He raised his phone and played the pre-recorded video from the hidden cameras. "Well, now I have the evidence," he said coldly, drawing their attention. Laura screamed and tried to cover herself, her face flushed with shame and anger. Tom turned sharply, seeing Jack with his phone. "You're insane, Jack," Laura shouted, her eyes filled with fear and panic. Realizing their secret was exposed, Tom grabbed a large butcher knife from the table. "You won't publish this," he said, approaching Jack with a menacing look. "I'm tired of your games," Jack said, trembling with rage. "Either you stop this now, or the whole town will see your dirty secrets." Tom wasn't going to back down. He stepped forward, his face twisted with rage. "You're not leaving here," he hissed, pointing the knife at Jack. A brutal fight broke out between them. Tom was strong and determined. Jack tried to defend himself, but his strength was fading. At one point, the knife got too close, and Tom managed to strike. The blade slashed Jack's arm, and blood spurted onto the floor. Feeling his strength waning, Jack used his last bit of energy to press the button on his phone screen. The video started uploading to the internet. Tom saw this and his fury intensified. He continued to strike, his rage unstoppable. Laura screamed but couldn't stop Tom. Jack fell to the cold floor of the butcher's section, his vision blurring. The last sounds he heard were Laura's screams and the sirens of police cars. When the police arrived, it was too late. Jack lay motionless, his body covered in blood. Tom was arrested on the spot, his hands still stained with blood. Laura wept, realizing her life was forever changed. However, Jack had achieved his goal. He had published the video. Hours after his death, the footage of their affair went viral, causing a storm of outrage and ruining Laura and Tom's lives. Jack had completed his revenge, but at the cost of his own life. The end. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you for your attention.